Hello trainers, Professor Palm here, and welcome back to the spooky season. When in this time of the season, when it's the spookiest time, I think that the one typing we're thinking of most of all is the ghost typing. After all, they are the scariest typing out there. But it's also pretty scary to think how far ghost types have come. When we think back to the first generation, we only had 3, with Ghastly, Haunter, and Gengar. And now, as of Gen 9, we have 73 different ghost-type Pokemon. And honestly, there probably are even more out there. They probably might be even watching us right now. I just got a sudden chill thinking of ghost types. Well, I do happen to really like ghost Pokemon. I gotta admit, they really give me the creeps whenever I encounter them. Which is why I'm always happy to catch one. After all, having a little fear by your side really makes you a scary trainer. And I'd even go on record and say I always catch a ghost-type Pokemon whenever I'm in a region. I happen to find ghost Pokemon really strong, but also a rather unique typing. If you really think about it, Ghost is the only typing to have not just 1, but 2 immunities, even as a single typing. And with a dual typing, sometimes it can have even more. I also happen to find Ghost a very popular typing. If you really think about it, we have a lot of Ghost-type experts, as every region, minus the Kalos region, has given us a Ghost-type expert. But I'd also say that Ghost is very cool for having some really powerful moves that not only can give people the Heebie-jeebies, but they're also the only other typing next to Dragon that's also weak to themselves. While Ghost is already a pretty frightful typing itself when in battle, I'd say if you want to be scared, bust out your Pokedex and read a few Ghost-type Pokemon's Pokedex entries. Arceus almighty, are they terrifying. Ghost-type Pokemon already fill you with dread, but just reading the things that they can do when outside of battle or sometimes in battle is just horrifying. Honestly, if Ghost types don't scare you, the Pokedex entries and research that have led up to them will. Of all Ghost-type Pokemon out there, there is one that gives me so many nightmares. And I have to admit, despite this Pokemon being very small, it leads to big scares. It's probably one of the most dreadful Pokemon you could ever meet on a journey. And you've probably been looking at it because it's been wandering around a little bit. I'm of course talking about the costume maker itself, Mimikyu. This Pokemon may look cute and cuddly, but trust me, it's all for show. It may look like an adorable little plushie you might want to hug, but underneath that sheet is probably the scariest thing out there. Oftentimes, we read things about Pokemon that are very violent out there and can really do serious damage. Mimikyu happens to have a kill count, as this Pokemon is so scary that if you look and see what it is under there, you actually might die. Who knows what Mimikyu could look like under that disguise? Maybe I'll find out today. Maybe I'll just take it off and see for myself. No. It's not worth it. It's not worth dying over, considering how much shock I could go in seeing that thing. Really is one of the scariest ghost typings out there, and also one of the scariest fairy typings too, which is kind of interesting the more I think about it. Usually, fairy typing is a very happy-go-lucky and kind typing. Mimikyu, on the other hand, is a very violent and angry creature. It's probably one of the most aggressive fairy type Pokemon you'll ever meet. You know, I'm just curious. Since Mimikyu was recently discovered as a Pokemon, is it possible that this Pokemon is a spirit that was formed from the dark side of the fairy aura? Who knows? While Mimikyu may be one of the most terrifying Pokemon out there, as well as one of the most aggressive ghosts ever, being a vengeful spirit, I actually kind of feel bad for Mimikyu, considering the fact that maybe this thing is just the way it is because it wanted to make friends, but people in Pokemon were so scared of it, and even some of them would drop dead. I guess that's the reason why Mimikyu made its disguise of Pikachu. And considering that Pikachu is one of the most popular Pokemon in Alola, it did go with a good idea. Unfortunately, I don't really think that it worked, and so this is also what led Mimikyu to having a big grudge when it comes to Pikachu. When looking at Mimikyu's disguise, it is really impressive that Mimikyu managed to do all this. And it did choose a good Pokemon to go as, but I kind of wonder, are there any other Pokemon that Mimikyu could have masqueraded as? I would love to see different forms. And I will say though, all Ghost-type Pokemon have a special quirk to them of what makes them scary. Mimikyu's disguise definitely is something I have never seen another Pokemon do. I've seen Pokemon possess toys, I've seen Ghost-type Pokemon be vengeful spirits, I've even seen them kidnap others. But going with the extra mile for the Halloween idea of wearing something that it's not, it's really creative. It may not be Darkrai, but Mimikyu already fills me with a lot of dread whenever I see it walk by. It just scares me of what could be hiding under that disguise. Well, it is the scariest time of the year, and I think that today would be a great day to talk about one of the scariest ghost types ever, as well as one of the scariest fairies typings. So, I think that we should learn all about the Master of Masquerade. Let's put on some costumes today so we don't feel left out. And let's talk about the Master of Disguise itself, Mimikyu! Mimikyu the Disguise Pokemon is based on Ghost. Mostly disguises similar to the Halloween ghost costume made from a bed sheet with eyes cut out. Mimikyu also shares similarities from Bagul Nuz, a Breton myth about a kind and gentle fairy spirit whose horrifying ugliness caused it to be alone. And the fact that Mimikyu's true appearance can kill many is a reference to Eldritch monsters, who often drive a person insane or will kill them if they see their true form. If you want to find this masquerading Pokemon in the wild, you can always find Mimikyu during the night or in very dark and abandoned places, as Mimikyu hates sunlight and prefers scary places where it can feed on fearful emotions when something unexpected wanders in. Believe it or not, Mimikyu was only recently identified as a Pokemon, as previously people thought it was just a ghost wearing a cloth. You better not touch Mimikyu's cloth disguise, as it will become agitated and will violently attack you if you lay as much as a finger on its rags. Despite its small size, it can throw punches harder than a pro boxer. Because Mimikyu is a lonely Pokemon, it conceals its terrifying appearance beneath an old rag so it can get closer to other people and Pokemon. It wears a rag fashioned into a Pikachu costume in an effort to look less scary. Unfortunately, the costume had the opposite effect, scaring more away. The actual appearance of Mimikyu is unknown, as seeing what's under the rag may cause your demise, as it will overwhelm you with terror that you will die from. However, it's also claimed that seeing what's under the disguise of Mimikyu is covered in a terrible poison that may lead to a mysterious disease which will eventually claim your life. Since Mimikyu's true appearance is unknown, some studies believe that Mimikyu's neck is really weak, considering how easily it's broken from just a single attack. Whatever's inside is probably unharmed, but probably feels sad after all it went through the effort of disguising itself. The rag that Mimikyu uses to cover itself is so treasured by this Pokemon that if it's torn during an attack, it works all through the night to patch it up. The older the Mimikyu is, the more patches and scuff marks you'll see on the rags that it's sewn over its life. Mimikyu are violent Pokemon, and they hold grudges, as if their disguise is busted, they will mercilessly seek out the revenge on any opponent that either ripped up the disguise or broke its neck within battle. If they find them, Mimikyu will show no mercy and give them the beating of their life. And there's no thinking it will forget. Mimikyu has a photographic memory. While Mimikyu like to impersonate Pikachu, they're also very jealous of them, as wild Mimikyu constantly pick fights with wild Pikachu. One of the reasons being is how popular of a Pokemon Pikachu is and loved, as this Pokemon only wants to be loved, which is why it pretends to be one. Since Mimikyu prefer abandoned places to live, not only do Mimikyu feed off the energy of negative and fearful emotions, but it's believed that Mimikyu also feed off the power of other ghost types, as sometimes others appear very weakened around Mimikyu, due to it stealing their ghostly life energy to power itself up. Ghost Pokemon are some of the scariest Pokemon out there, and Mimikyu is no exception to any ghost Pokemon, as just seeing what this Pokemon truly is could bring your doom. This is one of the spookiest ghost types ever, but It's also the best time to talk about scary things, as it's the season of fear, and Mimikyu really is an incredible Pokemon. So let's talk on some fun facts and tidbits about Mimikyu, the master of disguise. There's a quote that said, 20 years ago, Mimikyu got jealous of Pikachu and created its costume. The 20 years is a reference to when Pokemon Sun and Moon were released in 2016, which was 20 years from the original Pokemon Red and Green's release in 1996. Of all the Alolan Totem Pokemon, Totem Mimikyu is the only Totem Pokemon that can be either obtained in Ultra Sun or Ultra Moon, while all the others are version exclusives, and the player can only get Totem Mimikyu from Samson Oak if they've collected a total of 80 Totem stickers. As of the 9th generation, Mimikyu is so far the only Fairy-type Pokemon with a Serpentine body. The Totem Mimikyu battle at the Thrifty Mega Mart abandoned site for Acerola's trial is so far the only place in Alola that you cannot backtrack to due to it not being a real place. In the Pokemon of the Year poll held by the Pokemon Company in 2020, Mimikyu was voted the most popular Pokemon of Gen 7, receiving 99,077 votes. All Pokemon are unique and have a special quirk to them that they can perform in or out of battle that we call an ability. For Mimikyu, it has the signature ability, Disguise. Once per battle, the shroud that covers Mimikyu can protect it from an attack, taking no damage. Unfortunately, though, once the disguise is busted, it cannot be fixed. So in short, Mimikyu's disguise is like starting off with Substitute. And if you try to give Mimikyu the ability patch to unlock its hidden ability, it will fail, due to Mimikyu having no hidden ability. Mimikyu is one of the few Pokemon that has an exclusive Z move that was introduced in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, being Let's Snuggle Forever. This will only activate if the player uses the Mimikyu Z Crystal on Mimikyu and uses the move Play Rough. In the Pokemon trading card game, for the set of Sun and Moon, there was a promo card of Mimikyu depicting it in the style of Edvard Munch's famous picture, The Scream, with Mimikyu acting as the Screamer. Also, for an interesting note, for every one of Mimikyu's rare full art prints, it's depicted with Acerola, who fittingly enough is a Ghost-type expert. Mimikyu makes an appearance in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, being a Pokemon that can be released from a Pokeball. It uses the move Let's Snuggle Forever on any opponent who gets too close to it. If the target is at 90% damage or more, they'll be instantly knocked out by it. So far, Mimikyu and Fluttermane are the only Pokemon to sport the Ghost and Fairy typing. On an interesting note, both of these Pokemon are incapable of evolution. In the anime, Meowth is the only one who has ever witnessed Mimikyu's true form, showing it to be an amorphous dark blob with a pair of glowing yellow eyes. Both times, Meowth died temporarily, but was later revived. For a little ghost under the sheet, Mimikyu sure makes massive scares to so many, as it loves bringing the fear factor to all it meets. However, even ghost Pokemon themselves can get scared, especially when in battle. While Mimikyu's disguise ability can take a hit, once it's busted, Mimikyu will be the one screaming in terror. And with its dual typing of Ghost type and Fairy type, Mimikyu will feel the dread it made others endure when it's hit by the moves that it's super weak to, being Ghost type and Steel type. Only 2 weaknesses for Mimikyu. Guess you could say, when it's hit by those moves, Mimikyu gets ghost busted. However, you shouldn't mess with the spirits. You know what they say, bad things come in small packages. And when Mimikyu is mad, it's dreadful. And with its dual typing of Ghost type and Fairy type, this little nightmare gets Great Stab, which spells doom for its enemies, with its super effective moves being against Pokemon that are Fighting type, Ghost type, Dark type, Psychic type, and Dragon type. Whoa, just whoa. 5 strengths in battle. Talk about a scary comeback. Mimikyu may be small, but it really knows how to terrify so many Pokemon. I guess it's Halloween every day to Mimikyu with the fear it gives. But if you thought this Pokemon was scary enough, Mimikyu has immunities when in battle. Jeez, the nightmare just doesn't end with this spectacular Master of Disguise. With its ghost and fairy typing, Mimikyu is completely immune to moves that are normal type, dragon type, and fighting type. While it may have weaknesses, with its many strengths and its immunities, Mimikyu sure is a frightening fighter in battle. It may look like a cute plushie at first, but trust me, this is a Pokemon you never want to snuggle together with. As freaky as Mimikyu is in battle, I think what's scarier is what could be under the sheet, as we still have no idea what terrors await under its disguise. With so many creepy ghost-type Pokemon, Mimikyu is one of the most unique ones and is quite a standout. While most ghost-type Pokemon scare people and Pokemon for kicks and fun, Mimikyu is so scary it can literally scare victims to death just by seeing its true appearance. Mimikyu is unlike any other ghost-type Pokemon, and you know what? Considering the fact that Mimikyu is only recently identified as a Pokemon, and to this day, we don't know what it looks like without the disguise on, I think that's enough to fill anyone with dread when they see it. When it comes to scary Pokemon, I don't think any Pokemon comes close to Mimikyu, who makes massive scares to all it meets, which is quite ironic for being such a small ghost Pokemon. While I know that Mimikyu is an aggressive Pokemon, maybe the reason it became this way was because it was lonely and it wanted to make friends. But unfortunately, so many others were afraid whenever they saw it. So it decided to dress up as another Pokemon it saw was popular to make friends. And Pikachu is one of the most popular Pokemon in the Alola region. I have to admit, I love the disguise that Mimikyu makes. I kind of think it would have been creative if Mimikyu had many different forms of cute Pokemon it masqueraded as. And since this Pokemon seems to be great at making costumes, I'd love to see what other disguises Mimikyu rig up to make. Also, this also works pretty well to its advantage, because Mimikyu can really lure a lot of people to their doom like this. I always found what Mimikyu had going for it to be so creative. If you think about it, it's using a disguise to make itself look like something cute and cuddly. However, under its disguise is one of the most terrifying Pokemon ever created. It's a really cool contrast that Mimikyu has going for it in this masquerade. And it's also pretty smart what it does to lure unsuspecting victims to their doom. With Mimikyu using something cute to hide its true form, then dropping its disguise to show its mysterious murderous form is the stuff of nightmares. But with how well it plays the part, you can call Mimikyu the master of disguise. Welcome back, trainers. I hope that you enjoyed learning a lot about Mimikyu. I'm just glad that we're finally at the end. This Pokemon gives me the creeps. I don't even want to know what this Pokemon looks like without the disguise on. So I'd say we end it here. But before we do, I just have a few questions for you. When it comes to ghost-type Pokemon, I think that they're some of the strongest yet scariest typing out there. Of all ghost-type Pokemon out there, which is the one that fills you with the most amount of dread? In my opinion, I think that the Pokédex is one of the scariest things we have in the world of Pokemon, especially when reading some entries. When it comes to you, what are some of the most unsettling entries you've ever read on the Pokédex? While Mimikyu may not have the ability to give nightmares like Darkrai can, I'd say that Mimikyu already fills a lot with dread. When it comes to you, what's the Pokemon that fills you with the most dread and would give you nightmares? And of course, I'm pretty sure that we're familiar with the scary stories of toys coming to life being possessed by vengeful spirits. I've seen enough movies and read enough stories about that. What do you think would scare you the most if it came to life being possessed by a ghost? I'm just glad that we're finally at the end. Just looking at this Pokemon fills me with so much dread and it really is scaring me. But I'd also go on record and say that Mimikyu is a great Pokemon to have on any team, as it can really raise the fear factor, especially for your opponents. Well, if you liked what you saw, then please leave a like. If you have any questions, you want to answer the questions I threw at you, you have an idea of a video I should make, or there's something I should talk about in the Pokemon current events, please comment. And if you like what you saw and you want to see more, smash the subscribe button. As a Pokemon professor, it's my job to teach trainers like all of you, so please recommend my videos to as many trainers as you can. I'm happy to meet you. I hope that you've been enjoying the spooky season. It's still going strong, and the season of fear is going to get even scarier. Thanks for watching, trainers. Until then, Palm out.